Greetings all, name's Angel Shade and welcome back to another episode of The Arsenal. In this video we will run down the submachine guns of Call of Duty 2. And there's an interesting thing about them in this game. See, this was before the age of custom loadouts and all armies in the game, apart from the German, have two submachine guns. Differences are not that much in damage as they are in effective ranges and mobility. British, American and Russian armies all got a lighter and a heavier submachine gun. The lighter ones have a shorter effective range and they allow faster movement. In total there are 6 submachine guns. 2 are new and the rest are passed on from the previous Call of Duty. So let's deal with the old ones first, and we'll begin with the Thompson. The good old Tommy is back and is, surprise surprise, shared between British and American armies as the heavier submachine gun. Tommy is fairly common in the American campaign, though you will be inclined not to use it as much since Garants are also common and they are useful at all ranges, as opposed to Thompsons who are only really useful up close. Thompson can be quite effective in multiplayer when it's used properly. When not, however, it becomes a very annoying headache of a weapon. Its recoil is significant and takes a lot to keep the gun on target already at medium ranges. It will take at least 3 hits to kill a target up close, and damage fall-off will rise this number to 5 or 6 at longer ranges, meaning that's up to 6 shots you need to land successfully, which can be difficult when you're being fired upon as well. Another possible issue is that Thompson's magazine size has been reduced from 30 bullets to 20, which results in more frequent reloads and less room for making mistakes. That said, Thompson can be quite effective as long as you keep the ammunition constraints in mind and maneuver closer to your targets before letting loose. Moving on to the German MP40 or Maschinenpistole 40, which is also a familiar gun. You can find a metric crap ton of these in the campaign, and there's always ammo for them, so it's always a good idea to have them as a backup. In a multiplayer this is the only submachine gun the German team has, and following my earlier description of lighter and heavier submachine guns, this one fits the former. It shares the lowest rate of fire among the submachine guns with the grease gun, and it has a very hiccupy, stuttering firing sound. However, it has next to no recoil, meaning it's piece easy to aim with. It's also very light, so it offers excellent mobility. And it has a good damage and it's effective at long range. It has a 30 round clip which, combined with low recoil and low rate of fire, can allow you to pick several targets off at a distance before needing to reload. To get most of the MP40, use it at short to medium ranges, keeping in mind the low rate of fire will put you at a disadvantage against pretty much all other automatic weapons. Next, let's do a submachine gun that combined aspects of both the Tommy gun and the MP40, the British Stan, which is also passed on from the previous game. You won't see Stan often in the campaign. It will be issued to you in a few missions, and sometimes you will have a chance to pilfer one off a corpse. But for the most part in the campaign you will have a Tommy gun in your hands. In multiplayer too, Thompson is preferred over the Stan, latter filling in the role of the higher mobility submachine gun. While many players perceive Stan as weaker, inferior submachine gun to the Tommy, the reality is actually quite different. Stan deals virtually the same damage as the Tommy, but albeit with more damage fall-off. However, like MP40, Stan offers more mobility. Its clip also holds 30 rounds as opposed to Thompson's 20. Stan has very little recoil and is very accurate, and its rate of fire is neatly nested between the Tommy and the MP40. Overall, Stan is one of the best submachine guns for the run and gun style of gameplay. Last of the submachine guns that have been passed on from the previous game is the Russian PPSH or Pasha. You'll have it in a few missions during the Russian part of the campaign, but you won't get to feel its awesome power until you try it out in multiplayer. If you remember in Call of Duty 1 and the United Offensive, the Pasha was an extremely powerful submachine gun. While pretty much useless at any significant distance, its huge ammo capacity and ridiculously high rate of fire made it into a killing machine. However, their Pasha also came with a barely controllable recoil and insane muzzle spread, so you could fight against it with any gun that has better range and accuracy. Here it's not that simple. See, in Call of Duty 2, Pasha still has an insane rate of fire of almost 900 rounds per minute and a huge 71 round drum magazine. And while its damage per round is pathetic, those small damage nibbles at almost 900 rounds per minute turn it into a huge damage bite in a second. The weapon has significant recoil, but it's nowhere as difficult to control as it used to be, and it doesn't take long to get used to controlling your bursts to deal with distance targets. The weapon is still useless at long ranges, but in many ways the rate of fire alone will compensate for it. In close quarters, this weapon's effectiveness is monstrous, and as a result, this is the second gun in Call of Duty series to hold the noob gun title, with many feeling the gun being severely overpowered. It's a bunch of whining if you ask me. A well-placed rifle round still stops anyone using a Pasha dead in his tracks. But, you know, kids will be kids and whiners will be whiners, and to truth be told, the gun is really powerful. And next we have the two new submachine guns. And since we started this with the American Tommy gun, let's cover the new American submachine gun, the M3 Grease gun. The M3 was an American 45 caliber submachine gun, adopted for US Army service on 12 December 1942. The M3 was chambered for the same 45 caliber round fired by the Thompson submachine gun, but was cheaper to produce, lighter and more accurate. The M3 was commonly referred to as the grease gun, or simply the greaser, owing to its visual similarity to a mechanic's grease gun. Intended as a replacement for the 45 caliber Thompson series of submachine guns, the M3 and its improved successor, the M3A1, began to replace the Thompson in first-line service in late 1944 and early 1945. Due to delays caused by production issues and approved specification changes, the M3 saw relatively little combat use in World War II. In 1941, the US Army Ordnance Board observed the effectiveness of submachine guns employed in Western Europe, particularly the German MP40 and British Sten guns, and initiated a study to develop its own Sten-type submachine gun in October 1942. The Ordnance Department requested the Army submit a list of requirements for the new weapon, and Ordnance in turn received a separate list of requirements from both the infantry and cavalry branches for a shoulder-fired weapon with full or semi-automatic fire capability in caliber 45 ACP or 30 caliber carbine. It was originally hoped that the M3 could be produced in numbers sufficient to cancel future orders for the Thompson submachine gun and to allow the Army to gradually withdraw the Thompson from frontline service. However, due to unforeseen production delays and the request for modifications, the M3 never fully replaced the Thompson during World War II, and purchases of the Thompson continued until February 1944. A total of 622,163 M3s, submachine guns and of all types were assembled by the end of World War II, by which time the Thompson, at over 1.5 million guns produced, outnumbered the M3 in service by a factor of nearly 3 to 1. The M3A1 did not see combat in World War II, but was used in Korea and Vietnam. You won't find this fart gun in the campaign. It's the Americans' lightning submachine gun. It actually deals more damage than the Thompson, however it's got worse range. But there are several points which put the grease gun above the Tommy. Firstly, with the grease, you get more mobility. Secondly, the recoil is very low, so aiming with it is easy. And thirdly, it has a decent 30-round clip. With 30 rounds and a much more controllable fire, when firing from cover you are in a much more favorable position. As with all submachine guns of this type, you should rely on the mobility in order to get close enough and use this gun's potential to its fullest. The gun's biggest drawback is its poor rate of fire, and the simplistic iron sights are ineffective for accurate fire at medium to long ranges. Personally, I prefer the grease gun over the Tommy. It's a lot easier to use and it has a lot more character. And lastly, there is the PPS-42, the Russian newcomer submachine gun, filling the role of the lighter submachine gun, providing more mobility than the Pasha. Historically, the PPS, or Pistolet Pulemyot Sudayeva, which in English translates to Sudaev submachine gun, was a family of Soviet submachine guns developed by Alexei Sudaev as a low-cost personal defense weapon for reconnaissance units, vehicle crews, and support service personnel. The PPS and its variants were used extensively by the Red Army during World War II and were later adopted by the armed forces of several countries of the former Warsaw Pact, as well as its many African and Asian allies. The PPS was created in response to a Red Army requirement for a compact and lightweight weapon with similar accuracy and projectile energy to the Soviet PPSH-41 submachine gun. Widely deployed at the time, with reduced rate of fire, produced at lower cost and requiring less manpower, particularly skilled manpower. Sudaev was ordered by the State Commission for Armaments to perfect for large-scale production the submachine gun design of Lieutenant E.K. Bezruchko-Vysotsky from Dzerzhinsky Artillery Academy, who had created two prototypes in 1942. The second of these was the basis of Sudaev's gun. The PPS remained in service with some Soviet forces until the mid-1950s. Among the last to relinquish it were crews of armored vehicles of the naval infantry. Some World War II-era weapons found their way to the Chinese People's Liberation Army and were subsequently captured by the UN forces in the Korean War. It's not like Russian army needed another slightly too effective submachine gun, but that's exactly what they got. The PPS-42 has a high rate of fire, which is comparable to the Tommy. Its damage is also comparable to Tommy. What isn't comparable to the Tommy is that the PPS-42 has a 30-round clip magazine and a very low recoil. Its fire can be easily controlled and it can hose down enemies at long ranges more effectively than Pasha. For all intents and purposes, this is a nerfed Pasha with clips instead of a drum magazine. It has a high rate of fire, so it has to be reloaded often. You can't run around guns blazing like with the Pasha. Well, to be honest, you can, but you will die more often because you will run out of ammo at critical moments, so keep your eyes on the ammo count. And that covers all the submachine guns of Call of Duty 2. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Until the next video.